A/B testing has become a critical component for successful e-commerce businesses looking to improve performance and make better decisions. After running more than 1,000 experiments myself, I'm going to show you how to build an A/B testing program from scratch so you can do the same. And in this video, I'm going to break down step by step how you can build a complete A/B testing program even if you're starting from zero. This strategic approach to A/B testing and experimentation is what helps my clients transform their business without spending a single extra dime on ads. So if you follow everything I lay out for you in this video, you'll have the foundation to achieve similar results for your business. Today I'm going to share with you the Experimentation Accelerator, or basically the system that we use with clients to build A/B testing programs from scratch, but also we can use the same or a slightly adapted system to optimize your existing experimentation program if you're already running experiments. All right, let's get right into it. Before we do that though, I want to quickly just highlight who this is for and who this is not for. Because for some companies, it just doesn't make sense. And also for some people, it just doesn't make sense if they're not on the right mindset. All right, so typically who this makes sense for is e-commerce companies that are already established, doing between $5 and $10 million or euros in ARR, or at least just annual revenue. You should be having approximately 200,000 or more monthly visitors in order to have enough traffic to even reach statistically significant tests. I mean, there is a lot more going into that, and it's a lot more complicated than just saying, oh, you need 200K visitors and then you're good to go. But as a baseline, this is what I'd say. If you have way less than that, it just does not make sense, or it will be way harder to show an ROI on the program. So this as a baseline. What I also advise for most companies is that you do have an existing marketing and development team. If you do not, there is obviously ways to do it without. But if you're a single person founder trying to on top of what you're already doing, stem an experimentation program, it's very likely to be doomed and fail. So yeah, that's typically what I do. And obviously the kind of pain that at least I see with most of the clients that I'm working with is, at least starting out when working, is they're typically tired of like random tests and essentially just recycling best practices from LinkedIn and what have you. So if these are in the ballpark of where you see yourself at, or the company you're working for, then this might be for you and you might be getting value out of this. If, on the other hand, you are, and I mentioned this, an early stage store that's essentially still chasing product market fit, don't have enough traffic, then doing something like this, like the Experimentation Accelerator, or essentially in general using experimentation at scale, won't be even something that will make sense for you. The same goes for if you're hoping that, well, for some kind of magic tool that will just auto-optimize everything while you sleep. It sounds like a wet dream because it's really, that would be amazing, but it takes out the essence of experimentation, and I will go a bit deeper into why that is, either in this video or in another one. But yeah, if that's what you're hoping for, well, maybe just skip ahead, watch maybe some other videos to understand why that doesn't make sense, or just, yeah, this is just not for you. The same goes for if you're just unwilling to invest a few focused hours per week in the process, but also in learning, then, well, nothing comes from nothing, and, well, or is it from nothing comes nothing, I think, but anyway, then that's also not for you. So why do I think I am even in the right position to talk about all of this and trying to teach you something here? Well, over the past decade, I've been literally parachuted into multiple 7 and 8 figure e-commerce brands, either as an interim CRO lead, I mean the titles have varied, or as an external consultant / agency. So I've literally seen it all, and I've brought companies from literally doing 0 experiments to sometimes hundreds, or just helping them optimize their existing experimentation program, increase efficiency, and with that typically profitability of the experimentation program and sometimes also the company at large. So every time I arrived, I typically see the same pattern. It's not exactly the same pattern always, but it's from a range of patterns, they're typically the same. So oftentimes there's zero trust in experimentation. Winning tests are assumed to be lucky blips, and teams typically don't have a repeatable roadmap. What that means is basically like executing a roadmap and then knowing how to continue, or even sometimes how to come up with insights for their experiments in the first place. And oftentimes just insights, I just mentioned them, they just disappear in Slack threads. So people spend time like doing research, but then that just evaporates and nobody does anything with it, which is essentially just wasting money and time. But what I've proven, and that this is across about 1,000, or actually by now probably more than 1,000 experiments, generating over 50 million euros in incremental revenue, it is that breakthroughs never are random. And they're typically the output, the predictable output of a rigorous system and process. And if you've done anything other than like e-commerce or anything else, you probably know the same. If you have a process and a system and you just follow it continuously and consistently, you will get the output you're looking for. Because typically, especially with systems that are around optimization, it is not just like trying the same thing over and over again and hoping for a different outcome, but it is like evolving the process. It is evolving how you attempt things, rather. And with that, if that is systematic, will come in the end, predictable output. So today you'll get the exact framework so you can engineer wins on demands instead of gambling on gut feeling. What that essentially means is you will not just like base all the experiments on your own or your team's opinions, but rather actually on your customers and customer problems. I think this is one of the core pieces actually to all of this. And if you only were to take one thing away, skip all the process, all that is like to put your customers first and not your own strive for revenue increase. But we'll get into that and how that plays out and how you can actually like make this actionable in just a bit. What I want to do now quickly, again, before we get into the nitty-gritty of the process or of the experimentation accelerator framework, is looking at the old versus new way. And I know this is a bit like probably black and white, but what I see a lot in with companies just starting out with experimentation, or even just like trying to optimize their online store without experiments, is they try to copy competitors. And obviously it's kind of natural. People are looking left and right. They're trying to chase best practices because this is what we're used to. But in the new system that I'm going to propose to you in this video, we're looking at process over people over tech. One, that means that tools can't fix a broken process. And the process essentially is around not just copying competitors or chasing best practices, but actually using like a system to understand, or at first actually gather user insights, just like insights from your user data and turning them into real actionable insights, test ideas, then testing these things and continuously building a better understanding of what it actually is that your customers are about, what they care about, and then using that to actually then optimize your product. So it's not about copying what other people did, even if they're successful, or just chasing best practices because some guru on the internet said so, but instead having a process that you can follow to actually get real insights and with that win and compete. All right, then the next old way of doing things is just doing one-off split tests for a 1% uplift. I mean, now I know this sounds a bit, again, black and white because sometimes it's more than a 1% or sometimes less, and sometimes you actually have to do multiple tests, but that's exactly the point. We want to be doing problem-first prioritization. So this is, again, looking at what customers actually care about, and I'll show you later what this looks like in practice, but the idea is basically that you, instead of prioritizing ideas and then they fail, you prioritize problems that are relevant for your customers. So once they're solved, you can actually add value to your customer, not just to your bottom line, And yeah, so the idea here is basically you prioritize problems, then find solutions for the problems that matter the most, and then you just don't do one-off split tests, but instead also really iterate and try to solve that problem and not just see whether or not a random idea has worked or not. Now, test to win, that sounds like the new way already, is it? Well, not exactly. What we're trying to do here, and I'm just quickly going to fix the formatting here, is we're trying to test to learn. And obviously, it goes like test to learn to win. But it's not just like test to win, because if you're just trying to test to win, this is so easy to game the system, right? You're trying to then like, find just tests that win, but you're leaving all the learning opportunity, which will result, at least in my experience, and I have evidence to prove that, to way larger wins in the long run. So what we're trying to do is test to learn and also establish this kind of understanding within the company, this assuming you're not just a sole person like doing everything on your own, but you're actually also trying to get experimentation to be the way business is done. All right, so every result feeds into the roadmap, obviously, but also into the institutional knowledge of the company. All right, next old way. Huge moonshot test that stalled for months. I've seen this over and over again. And honestly, sometimes it makes sense, but most of the time it doesn't. Which is like basically trying to build this big, huge test with hundreds of ideas into it. Some people call it a relaunch or whatever, or a radical redesign. And sometimes it can make sense, right? But most of the time, this is a huge risk because you're doing like 10, 20, 30 things of which you really have no idea which one actually is driving impact and which one is like just shooting you off the rails. So what we're trying to do more is like building a balanced portfolio of low, medium, and high risk tests. And risk also in this case means not just like doing like legally risky things. This is not what we're talking about, but actually doing tests that sometimes even we're sure of, and we'll see that they are not always winners. But then also like doing more risky tests, like maybe trying different value propositions, trying things out with different products, whatever it is, like in terms of content. Like we want to build a portfolio of small tests, big tests, some with low risk, high risk, and everything in between. So we have a balanced approach, and actually with that we're protecting our downside risk. All right, and then obviously, as I say here, doing that continuously. KPI shuffle every quarter. And this is actually a bit of a new one for me because, or maybe for the last 1.5 years, because when I was in one of my last interim jobs, it was quite interesting because I was working with them for about 1.5-2 years. Oh no, actually it was about a year in the interim role because hiring for the new position took a bit longer. And what I experienced, and I actually did my fair share in terms of contribution there, but we saw like shuffle of KPIs every year, not for the individual test necessarily, but also for the program. And while in a lot of cases that can make sense as the program evolves, if you're just trying to chase like revenue uplift or trying to like somehow bind that to that, this will detract from actually running meaningful experiments. And in that example specifically, I saw that happening every quarter or trimester. So what I typically advise now, even more so, is like defining and committing to like upfront success metrics that are not just like for a short amount of time, but maybe even just like a year, or actually longer term metrics that are aligned with your North Star metric for your company, which ultimately shouldn't change every few months. So I can't go into too much detail on how to do that practically right now. We might look a bit into it in just a minute, but this could be its own separate video, or actually series of videos. But just making sure that you're not just like trying to game the process by just changing KPIs around and seeing like, oh, in which one can we win, but actually trying to engineer things so that we can win on a certain set KPI for the project, for the program. All right, so basically the 3x3 experimentation accelerator, and it might make sense to scroll up here a bit, or actually let me copy that here and paste it in here again, just so we have it available. The Experimentation Accelerator is basically a system to take your team from scatter tests and burnt out dev time, and I've seen this a lot, to a smoothly running experimentation engine driving 15 to 25% revenue growth and a culture that's proud of testing. Obviously, the 15 to 25% revenue growth, this is a huge range, but I've actually seen sometimes programs that, because they're so big, not doing as much, but I've also seen programs doing, especially in the first years, way more. So there's a huge range, but basically what I'm saying, you can, with fairly little input, you can receive or generate huge amounts of upside for you or actually your company at large. All right, the way the Experimentation Accelerator is set up is basically in 3 stages. So we're looking at the plan stage, and we're going to look into the exact details in just a bit, the enable stage and the launch stage. The plan stage basically is supposed to give us a clear experimentation strategy that is aligned with your business objectives, complete with defined metrics and resource requirements. So let's look into that a little bit more detail. So building foundation, this is step number 1, is basically clarifying for you and your company why experimentation matters, not just in general, but why does it matter to you specifically? And the stories are plentiful, right? I've seen companies that have rolled out things or like features just to realize that actually they're like detrimental to their success or to their bottom line. Experimentation is a tool that helps remedy that in that we protect our downside risk by testing things, right? By making sure we're not just like blindly rolling out features or messaging or whatever it is we want to test, but we're protecting our downside risk, all right? Again, there is plenty of reasons why experimentation might matter, but it's good and really valid to understand why it matters for your company, because if you're trying to get more people on board, you will need to have a story, and you will need to have or be able to give them a reason. So experimentation is part of your strategy, of your business strategy, and actually starts mattering to people, and that you actually can get buy-in. If you can tell people why, it's so much easier to get them on board and get them to actually also unfold in the process, right? Then also part of building foundation is aligning business objectives with KPIs and metrics, because sometimes I've seen this a number of times where experimentation programs go in one direction and the business is trying to go in a totally different direction. And sometimes it makes sense to pivot there, but generally you should try to make sure that things are aligned, because when we're talking about resource constraints and budget, etc., if your program is going in a totally different direction, it will be very hard to actually get buy-in or sign off for resources and budget, but also generally for people to help you in that mission that is obviously or should be aligned with your business or company mission. Then also we'll analyze current customer problems and outline strategic test opportunities. Well, what this means, I think I mentioned it already a bit ago, but I'm talking also so much about these topics, so I might have that might have been a different instance. But generally, what we want to do is not just rely on our gut feeling. I think we've established that, and we don't just want to rely on random data. But what we want to do is we want to make sure that we're focusing our energy and our efforts on actual relevant customer problems that we then start solving. But we also need to understand what problems come first, right? There, in every business, there is a number, like an entire list typically of customer problems, even though only seldomly they're defined as such. But customers are having various kind of problems. They might not be understanding your product. They might not be trusting your product or the efficacy of your product, or products for that matter, right? But all these problems need to be prioritized in order to then make sure we're focusing on the top most important problems first, to then find solutions for these problems that we can then also again prioritize, right? But this is us in this part in building foundation, or build foundation here, it is our opportunity to build strategic test opportunities to make sure that down the line, we're actually also focusing on what matters most and not just our gamed opinion on priority. All right, then. Our next one is defining success, because what's the point of experimenting if we do not have a clear North Star metric, and this should be singular here, or lift targets? Like, what is the incentive for us to do any of that, right? Typically, we'd involve targets on like if various teams are involved in the process, then we might have multiple targets, etc. But also then agreeing on statistical guardrails that everybody signs off. For example, let's not try to diminish revenue for the sake of a conversion rate increase, right? This will also later make sense when we talk more on an experiment level about these things, but generally already on a program level, we should also define some guardrails, right? And then the next one is mapping resources. And obviously, if you're trying to build an experimentation program purely done for you by someone else, by an agency, this will be probably less relevant, but also I would probably say you're not really building an experimentation program in your company. You're just adding that function to your company or to your processes. But in any way, for the sake of this video, mapping resources is basically assessing your current skills. This could involve you as an individual, but also the skills in your teams. Your bandwidth, this means if you're already like busy and working overtime for like most of the days, adding experimentation, and also what I'm proposing here in this experimentation accelerator will likely be a challenge. And you need to understand, okay, what is the bandwidth I have or that my team has, and yeah, then basically understanding what kind of resources do I need to add maybe, or how can I shift responsibilities to other people so I can focus on building this experimentation program. And obviously over time things will get a little easier if there's more people involved, but especially in the beginning, typically it's a small group of people, even sometimes individuals, trying to push for this and showing the first results. So you get buy-in, you get more resources, more budget, and with that also possibilities to hire more people. Then with that is also identifying gaps, like especially with skills, like what kind of things do you not know how to do, and understanding, okay, maybe I need to start already looking for other people in the company who have these skills, or for people to hire for these specific roles. And then exactly, yeah, we need to decide which roles to hire, or also what we need to outsource now, or even sometimes just temporarily until we can make or get the budget for a certain hire, and maybe even what we can or should be outsourcing in the future. Outsourcing can also, by the way, mean just having another dedicated team doing something, for example, development or design, depending on how your company is set up, that is. All right, finally, we are getting to phase number 2, which is enable. So in plan, we basically set up the foundation. We define success, we map the resources. So we have a good understanding. We probably already have a full-on experimentation strategy, but we can't do anything with just a strategy. We need to build the bridge to execution. So this is where enablement comes in, right? This is creating a fully operational infrastructure and trained people. So the outcome is basically being able to execute tests using our then standardized methodology. And in step number 1 in the phase, or in total it's step number 4, we're going to audit tooling and data quality. What this means is basically we need to understand what tools do we already have available. If you're starting from scratch with experimentation, you likely do not have an A/B testing tool, or you might have a feature toggling tool, or feature flagging tool for that matter, that is capable of running or experiments. But we just need to understand, what do we have, what do we need to get, what do we need to buy, but then also making sure that the quality of data we're currently capturing is up to the standard that we need for A/B testing, because even small differences in data quality can make a huge difference in the validity of our A/B tests. If we find things we need to fix it, and stand up the experimentation stack from day one. What does this mean? Basically, we need to build a solid foundation from a technical standpoint and from a data standpoint, ideally from day one, so we can start testing with validity, enabling trust towards experimentation from the start. Realistically, this is not always the case, but we're trying to paint a perfect picture here and something to strive for. So that's what we're rolling with. Then step number 2 is adapting the playbook. What I typically do with clients who are doing this experimentation accelerator with us is using our proven experimentation playbook and adapting it to your company's processes, tech, and culture. What this means is we have all the SOPs and processes and systems already set up, documented, etc. And it would take literally years for most teams to copy that. What we offer is to take these systems and then obviously adapt them to your company. We understand that every company is different, culture is different, setup is different, team structures and organization is different. But the core components of these playbooks and systems still typically stay the same. So we can use that, save a lot of time, and help you get started ASAP. And even most of the time, these playbooks are evolved over time, but this is a good starting point in order not to just having to go through trial and error and figuring out yourself. Then step number 3 is training teams. And this doesn't mean that we have to train everybody in the company, but basically we want to make sure that core and cross-functional stakeholders are one, starting with the right mindset, have the necessary know-how for what they are responsible for in the experimentation program that we're building. But then also some people need tool training, especially when it comes to A/B testing tooling or experiment tooling. So we're able to run, but also in the long-term scale experimentation and experiments in particular in our company. Obviously, this, I think I said it just now actually, is not to make sure that from day one everybody knows everything about experimentation. This is just setting the foundations again and getting people to, and this includes you, but also other people on your team or people you want to get on the team to be able to run experiments and to do so with indeed the right mindset. All right, now actually finally we're getting to the launch phase. This is probably what you've been waiting for, and what we're trying to get out of the launch phase is a self-sustaining experimentation program delivering measurable business impact through regular high-quality tests across multiple channels. So why is this important? So, well, this phase 1 is planning, building foundation, mapping, resources, defining success. All right, we've got direction. Then phase 2, enablement, right? We're creating infrastructure. We have the playbook, the processes, the systems. Our teams now know what to do, but they're still not doing anything, right? So this is about launching. So what we want to do in step number 1 is shipping the first wave of tests. And often sometimes this is happening in parallel to phase 2, especially once infrastructure is set up, to demonstrate wins early, but also to already understand what things in the playbooks that we are offering are not working, what things are working, and adapting it. Because without doing anything, you can't learn and you can't get feedback. So this is our first opportunity to, 1, create wins as early as possible, but number 2, to actually get going and test and learn for the program, but also on an experiment level. Then number 2 is scaling impact, which is basically once we have the first wave of tests, experimentation is slowly starting to be something that people are seeing in the company, and we're like, wow, this is actually quite cool. It's typically something I see people reacting, also sometimes the exact opposite, like what the heck you're doing. But then still we want to start increasing velocity, essentially increasing adaptation, and turn early insights into reusable productized learnings across channels, or even just opportunities to test more on different channels. But then slowly but surely we want to start embedding culture, spreading knowledge, celebrating wins, and grow org-wide enthusiasm so experimentation becomes indeed second nature. Now, frankly, embedding culture and scaling impact is typically not what we can do in 90 days alone, right? But this is already building or doing the things to like sharing and spreading knowledge, celebrating wins. This is operationally what we want to be doing in order to embed culture, in order to scale the impact of experimentation, because the more people involved in experimentation, the more impact we can expect. All right. Now, we know it works, and it probably wouldn't be talking about it so boldly if I hadn't seen these systems actually work. But if you want to check some of the clients out that we've worked with, that we've built experimentation programs with, then go ahead. Actually, one of my favorite quotes initially was in German. I translated it was like this by the previous CMO of PKWDE, German used car platform. And I'm just going to read it to you because like it struck me. I was so happy when I read that when he sent that to me on Slack. It was already, I think, 2 years ago. But it was basically, besides uplifts in conversion rates at various points of the customer journey, the project with Retect help implement experimentation culture. Can you see how my heart lit up there? In our company, which we continue to strengthen across the entire team to this day. And honestly, this was not me asking for a testimonial or anything. It was literally like a nice message that I got from the guy. And I asked if I can publish it because it's so nice. And I think there was another one where he was basically like, yeah, initially people were a bit like not sure about experimentation, but over time, like people were like coming and like just like asking, hey, isn't this something we can also test? And that's I think that was amazing. And we've had similar experience with other companies. But anyway, other examples, Ahead Nutritions, we built a systematic program that unlocked significant revenue growth for them. Rosenthal, this is also one of the clients that I worked with as an interim CRO lead, turning scatter tests into a pipeline of insights driving continuous CRO wins. And DevShop, there we set up an experimentation tooling and program that helped transform, I think I missed the sentence here, basically their digital product development process. Here are another few clients that we've worked with cumulatively, also with the team that I'm working with. So just to show you a bit of the companies that we've worked with. So now what's next? Well, I do have an entire free course. The link is here. I can move this because you can now click on it directly, which guides you through the entire CRO and experimentation process, or at least the big pillars that I believe help you to set up a strategic experimentation program also from scratch. This entire thing here is more the long-term accelerator. But if you want to also learn a bit more about the nitty-gritty details, then this is probably the course, the video that I'd recommend to you. It's a bit lengthy. I think it's about an hour long. But if you're really interested, then I do highly recommend you getting into it. What we also do offer is like an experimentation game plan. And we do only have limited spots for these game plans per month. So if you want to grab the chance, just book a meeting and we can see if we can do it this month, or maybe we'll have to wait to the next month. But basically what we're doing there is we're running a maturity assessment, an opportunity mapping. We'll do a 60-minute one-on-one workshop, and at the end you'll get a personalized PDF roadmap to take you from where you are at the moment to where you want to be with your experimentation program. And that doesn't matter if you have not run a single experiment or if you want to actually just revamp your program, but with confidence and get clarity and focus before investing time and budget into building and running this experimentation program. Essentially, you'll leave with a step-by-step blueprint to run it yourself or partner with us for the full accelerator, which is, by the way, this thing which we offer as a done with you service with for our clients. So yeah, now you know the entire process to build a complete A/B testing program from scratch. Execution beats insight, so please hit the link, start the free course, book your game plan, and I will be seeing you on the other side. I hope this was of value to you, and yeah, talk to you next time.